Good evening. I'm Bob Schwartz of the Gay Liberation Network. Sitting to my right is Andy Thayer, the co-founder of the Gay Liberation Network. As you may have noticed on the title page, we are going to spend some time tonight talking about marriage equality, in Illinois. We'll also spend some time talking about the situation regarding the anticipated decision of the United States Supreme Court on marriage issues affecting the LGBT community, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. We'd like to begin by touching on events that are still transpiring in Springfield. Hopefully, by the end of the session, at about midnight tonight, a vote will be taken on the bill that would affect marriage equality in Illinois, making Illinois the 13th state, I believe, to have marriage equality. Some other states like Rhode Island, with its supposedly conservative population, recently approved marriage equality. Delaware and my home state of Minnesota. So what's going on with Illinois? Now, Andy has been in Springfield for 2 days. He arrived here just a few minutes ago, and so what's going on down there?
Well, right now, and as you mentioned, we've got a deadline of midnight tonight in order to pass marriage equality in Illinois, or else the whole process is going to have to start all over again with this bill. Today is the last session of the legislature, and while the governor is pledged to sign it, and while the Senate passed it back in February, the thing is hung up in Mike Madigan's house. It literally is, Mike Madigan is the biggest impediment to marriage equality. Supposedly, he's saying nothing goes forward until he gets his pension bill passed, and people have been probably following the extracurricular activity around that, and our equal rights are basically being held hostage to this rancid pensions bill that Mike Madigan and the Senate are trying to pass. Mike Madigan's version is somewhat more rancid than the Senate's, but basically they're trying to take away pensions that they have promised to Illinois workers who fought long and hard for these agreements that were supposedly ironclad, indeed guaranteed by our state constitution, and now the state is trying to renege on those agreements, and equal marriage rights for same-sex couples in Illinois are held hostage literally at this hour. They still have not brought the bill for a vote. Representative Greg Harris, who's the principal sponsor, has pledged to do that. Whether or not it's got the votes, he claims it's got the votes. But I think the most important thing is that we live in a state which, according to the latest polls by Crane's Chicago Business, favors equal marriage rights by a factor of nearly 2-1 versus the opinions of our opponents. 2-1. And so this isn't a politically difficult vote for most legislators to make. In fact, we've got a couple of Republicans that announced their co-sponsorship today. The problem is Mike Madigan's House, where he's got an overwhelming majority of Democrats, and yet they can't get this bill passed. Now,
let me just say, speaking to that point, that we've been saying for some time that Madigan is the problem. The other gay groups who support marriage equality only yesterday sent out messages urging people to contact Madigan. They must know what we've known for a long time. And why haven't they called him out?
Well, because they play the inside politics game. They want to have future favors from Mike Madigan and the people that he is head of in the House. If there's a single most powerful politician in Springfield, everyone knows that it's Mike Madigan.
Right,
he rules that House with an iron grip. He gets all sorts of monies from wealthy donors, and if you cross Mike Madigan, then you get a challenge in your primaries, and so everyone runs scared of him, even more so than our insipid aldermen here in the city of Chicago. It's amazing just how cowed the Democratic representatives are in the House there. And so it's been our position all along. This is Mike Madigan's House. He's perfectly happy to ram through these horrible pension bills. He's perfectly happy to ram through all sorts of give-backs to his wealthy contributors. But when it comes to civil rights, then the whole thing is held hostage. And certainly with the opinion polls being what they are, he can't claim that it's because there's a difficult political climate or anything like that. It's just that civil rights are not a priority for Mike Madigan. In fact, people have speculated that he's tried to hold on to the issue so that when his daughter runs for governor next year, that she can claim credit for passing equal marriage rights rather than her opponent in the Democratic primary, Governor Quinn.
Right.
And so it's a cynical game of our rights being held hostage to, this time, the Democrats playing political football with our rights. Certainly the Republicans have had their extracurricular activities in that regard as well.
Well, the Democrats, it's important to note, have a 2-to-1 majority.
Almost.
Okay.
Almost.
Close to a 2-to-1 majority in the Illinois House. And yet, and you know, the leadership says it's in support of the marriage bill, and yet they can't get it passed. And the gay organizations don't want to call Madigan out. I would say, as you suggested, because they're allied to the Democratic Party.
That's right.
Those relationships are so important to them that they wait until the last minute. Right. To put some pressure on Madigan, when from our point of view they should have been doing it all along.
Yeah, and the good thing is that when I made remarks at a rally we had in the spring in the Capitol building this morning, I focused pretty exclusively on the problem of Madigan being the biggest impediment to our equal rights right now, and people in the crowd got it, even if the leaders of the gay organizations are nervous about saying that.
We have a caller. Let's take that call. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, good evening. I think you gentlemen are framing your argument incorrectly, and let me explain. You're being, I think, a little too vicious to Mike Madigan. He's not trying to totally take away anybody's pension. He's trying to alter those to save money for the state, so there'll be a reduced payout. And perhaps if you weren't so vicious, and it does come across, I'm just being honest, you are coming across as being a little bit too vicious on it. Maybe he'd see your position in a different light. Again, you're not really going to have as good of an effect for your argument, giving out information that somewhat was incorrect. Again, the pension isn't being yanked out. Nobody's going to be left out in the cold. It's going to be an altered package that again should help the state's financial position. And again, I don't think it's going to get you guys anywhere by coming across as vicious to them. I mean, if you modify your argument a little bit, frame it a little differently, it has a different effect. So, whatever your issue is, you're going about it the right way, democratically. But again, like I say, I know he's not everybody's favorite person, but again, I just don't think it benefits you by, just give the best accurate information and frame your argument, and perhaps you go farther. So that's really all I had to say.
All right, thank you, caller.
Okay. Well, for one thing, let's be clear here. The state of Illinois agreed to these pension levels for current retirees and potential retirees. It's something they agreed to contractually, and people make life choices based upon this, especially since many municipal workers are not eligible for Social Security, for example. And so you could say, well, the problem is, maybe this is a diversion or whatever to be talking about the pension issues, but we live in a state that's right now contemplating giving literally hundreds of millions of dollars so that the DePaul Blue Demons can have a stadium put up right next to the already wealthy McPier down by McCormick Place. We have these deals happening both at the statewide level, and they happened under every single governor and every single speaker before Madigan. The fact is that with the worsening economic crisis beginning in '08, the chickens have been coming home to roost. And so all the fat cat deals that Daley did are now coming to roost under Emanuel. All the fat cat deals done under Blagojevich and Thompson and Edgar, etc., are now coming to roost right now. And who are they trying to take the money from? Once again, it's working people, retirees. And yes, the state's situation is a fiscal mess, but they're not the ones who should have to pay for it. Especially when you have these $100 million, I believe it's $300 or $400 million. Correct me if I'm wrong about what just the stadium deal they're talking about.
Well, and on the state level, I'll mention this, and then I want to direct us back to the marriage issue. But on the state level, all kinds of tax breaks are given to a big business interests. So if they need money, maybe they could get it from the wealthy instead of from working people.
Look at the millions that Boeing got to move to Chicago. Look at the millions being shoveled over to the wealthy Hyatt Corporation to put a hotel in Hyde Park over and over again. But when it comes to people's pensions, when it comes to closing mental health clinics, suddenly people are greedy if they demand basic human rights. But that's another issue. We're talking about marriage equality today and this bill that is hanging in the balance. And we literally have got 5 hours and 17 minutes for this thing to pass.
Why don't we look at some of the shots that you...
Well, just a few announcements here. We got our website here, gayliberation.net, to find out more about the GLN. And also, here are some shots about some of the activities in Springfield yesterday and today. This is in the Rotunda. This is a family that has wanted to get married. They've got 2 kids, and they've got a third on the way. The speaker there, she was talking about that very eloquently in the Capitol Rotunda this morning. Some more couples talking about their issues, and there we go. Be on the right side of history. That gentleman holding that nice sign there. Picture of the crowd that we had at the rally this morning, called on literally less than 24 hours notice. And this is a little action that we did yesterday in the chambers. We did a little demonstration, if you will, and got carted out after this for that. And Markel Smith, who's one of the gentlemen, an ex-Marine Corps, he was purged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and he came down from Chicago to tell why he is in favor of marriage equality. And this raises another issue. What's going on here in Illinois, whether or not we become the 13th state, isn't just of importance to Illinois. It's about what happens perhaps with the Supreme Court when it issues its marriage rulings on California's Proposition 8 and Section 3 of the so-called Defense of Marriage Act, denying federal benefits to same-sex couples. The court is set to make its decision by the end of June. It could happen any weekday between now and then, though probably in the latter half of June. And we in the Gay Liberation Network and organizations around the country are going to be organizing the so-called Day of Decision actions, 7 p.m. at here in Chicago at Halsted and Roscoe Street, because if we get bad decisions out of the court, then we need to obviously protest. If we get a so-called middling decision, which won't be a middling decision at all, it'll just simply say that Proposition 8 is invalid perhaps in just a few counties of California or in the state of California or a few additional states like Illinois. That's a so-called middling decision that's been much talked about and experts see as the most likely result. Then we need to be out in the streets and protest as well, because that's basically going to be setting up a notion that states' rights prevail over civil rights, which is something the civil rights movement back in the day rightfully rejected. And then the last option is, of course, if we win equal marriage from coast to coast, then that doesn't mean that the battle is over with there. We have got to not only secure equal employment rights, equal access to housing, equal access to public accommodations, but we also need to implement the court's decision, because back in 1954 with the Browner versus Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas, we got a great decision out of the court way back then, but it remained a dead letter until we actually had the civil rights movement pick up a head of steam and force implementation of that decision.
I think it's important to point out in terms of the Supreme Court and the hearings that were held, I think it was in March.
Right.
Many of the gay groups have chosen to ignore this fact, but Obama sent his Solicitor General, the top legal officer for the U.S. government, the one who goes to the Supreme Court to make arguments on behalf of the government. The Solicitor General went there and said the states should decide.
Right. Right.
And even some of the judges, I remember, were amazed that Obama, who supposedly supports marriage equality, would send his chief attorney to the Supreme Court to argue a states' rights position.
Right, and this is something that the African American civil rights movement back in the 1960s and 50s roundly rejected, because as Dr. King said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. You can see how odious that kind of concept is in the years before the Civil War, where the injustice of slavery in the South infected the North through things like the Fugitive Slave Act and other measures where the inequality couldn't help but seep north, and racism, of course, was very rife in the North as a result of that legacy of slavery. So we shouldn't be so stupid as to repeat those mistakes of the Civil War era. We need to take a page from the African American civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s and say, no, equal rights is like a light switch. It's either on or it's off.
Well, and it should be there should be national equality, not equality in some states and inequality in other states. Argentina recently enacted marriage equality, not in some states or provinces, but nationally. France recently enacted marriage equality for the entire nation.
In the face of much more opposition than we've seen here.
Much more opposition, and the French president, whatever his faults, we could talk about those later, but I mean, he had the courage to stand up and say, no, we're going to have equal marriage across France. Obama has never said that.
Yeah. Well, he was a late convert to the equal marriage rights situation only just several months ago. But
well, he was for it, and then he was against it,
yeah,
and then he was for it again.
Yeah.
Which way? Which way is the wind blowing? And we have another caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi. I'm calling in here from up in the northwest suburbs. I was wondering what's going on down there. In Springfield. I mean, I'm sitting here waiting. I'm listening to the radio. I'm trying to figure out why these guys can't seem to get it done. They can get legislation passed that might end up killing a lot of people with a lot of extra bullets and clips of guns, but they can't get something out there that will help average working people in the state of Illinois. So what the hell is going on?
Well, I think you make a good point. And anyone who actually observes the proceedings of the legislature from the gallery for the first time, I think, would be rather aghast. In fact, they've got a rule against videotaping, and the issue is not the audio or not, because if you actually take a look at what most of the legislators are doing, while each of them are supposedly giving very erudite comments, they're checking their Blackberries, they're chatting, and it's like a big cafeteria or something. And really the notion that important issues are being decided here by reasoned argument and passionate debate is really a fiction if you watch it from the galleries, as some of us have had a chance to do over the past few days. The fact of the matter is all the decisions are made behind closed doors, and then they bring it up to the chambers, and but the real decisions are made before it even gets to that point. In that respect, it's very much like a Chicago City Council meeting.
I was watching the streaming of the action on the House floor, and a member of the House asked the Speaker on a point of personal privilege if a vote was going to be called on the gambling bill, and the Speaker said, "Well, I can't make any comment about that." I mean, here's a member of the House asking if action's going to be taken on a bill like that might provide a casino for Chicago, or and it's a very controversial issue, and he can't get information.
Throws his hands up because, of course, he doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
And this is the outrageous thing. This is that our rights, as well as the rights of many other people, are subject to this, frankly, very debased process. And it's not just about the equal right to marry, because legal equality means more than that. If a whole group of people are devalued in society, then they are more prone to discrimination. Our youth are more prone to suicide and so forth. Equal marriage rights, the right to equal job prospects and so forth are important for those very reasons, but they carry far bigger ramifications, even if you have no desire to get a particular kind of job, whether it's the military or get married or what have you. And so I think that's the real problem also with a lack of a 50-state solution.
I think we should proceed to
right
to announcements. And on Monday, June 3rd, Cindy Sheehan, the prominent anti-war activist who is on a bicycle tour of the U.S., is going to be in town to stand with Bradley Manning, who is the gay WikiLeaks man who's being victimized by the Obama administration and the U.S. military. He's being prosecuted for telling the truth, and we should stand with him. That's Monday, June 3rd at Buckingham Fountain in Grant Park, of course, at 5:30. Is that correct? At 5:30. Supreme Court Day of Decision, as Andy mentioned earlier, 7 p.m., Halsted and Roscoe Streets. Now, we don't know when this is going to happen, so go to our webpage and just be alert to what's going on with the Supreme Court decision. We will have some notification of when that decision is coming down, so we'll get the word out about the Day of Decision protest at Halsted and Roscoe Streets in Chicago. The next GLN meeting is at 7 p.m. Wednesday, June 5th. That's at the Burger Park Cultural Center, which is located at Sheridan and Granville. It's close to the Granville Red Line stop. Gay Liberation Network. Our next show on CAN TV will be Friday, June 14th at 6:30.